second take diatribe. Video that's up on the net that's 11 minutes and 14 seconds by Nikolai, June 22nd, 2020. And of course, he's doing an ad for ExpressVPN for some reason. Anyway, what happened to the all-female League of Legends team? Same thing that happened to the majority of all League of Legends teams that are presumed somehow to always be male. They didn't win, or they did win based on their ability to work as a team of people who should have the highest skill level possible combined to be able to do something in a competitive activity. Not a competitive sport, even if it's called an e-sport, it's a competitive activity. Chess is an insanely, horrifyingly competitive activity. Hanging out with 3 chess champs at a coffee shop over a period of time that I've been at that coffee shop makes it to where I understand why I'm very happy I stopped playing chess when I found out I was good enough to beat average chess players. You know, on this side of the graph, the bell curve's early, very early. It's a low-hanging bell curve. I was part of that low-hanging bell curve, and I could beat a majority of the people I would play against, but that's because the majority of people suck at playing high-level chess. I'm not a good chess player. I'm decent at it. I can bamboozle somebody. I'm very good at making sure that the game won't end for the longest period of time. I'm sort of the crash test dummy for chess. I could play against 50 people. That's not impressive. I'm still going to lose all 50 games, most likely, unless I frustrate them enough that they quit, which is how I would beat them. That and the fact that I think I was 11 at the time, and I was going up against grown-ups that had ego problems. I didn't have an ego problem. I assumed I was going to fail. I also assumed that if I could frustrate them, they would get fed up and quit. And they did, and I was able to beat just over half of them. And they were fair to middling. However, the ones that were actual chess players who were serious about it, you know, even just a little bit above, no, I couldn't beat them. And like a lot of things I got kind of good at or kind of competent at, I dropped it when I found out that I couldn't get beyond a certain point or hit a stumbling block, just like most of you do. At least I tried, playing various instruments or whatever. Or I got really good at it and then got bored with it. I'm currently on a binge for like the last year or so, just keeping my mind busy, learning about all the mechanics and engineering and all the variety of them for making firearms. I mean, it's really simple. There's literally, if you do it right, 2 springs and 2 moving parts in it that are actually the action that does the job of setting off the cartridge. It is not complicated. In fact, it is dead ass almost as non-complicated as just taking a piece of pipe, jamming a bullet in it, and pressing it against a wall, and then jamming the barrel backwards to set it off. If you just have a rough surface, it'll do it. It's that angry monkey with a metal pipe level intelligence required. It would technically work, especially for something like a 12 gauge and using a 3/4 inch Schedule 40 pipe. It's not complicated. The infinite potpourri of branching activities of being a gun designer or engineer, or the proper word would be a gunsmith, it's just like washing dishes, is one of my favorite quotes. You take in the piece of equipment, find out why it isn't working, repair what's wrong with it or replace the part, and then give it back to the customer and get your money. This is no different than me pulling out a bad sound card and putting in a good one on a computer, or pulling off a muffler that's bad and putting a new one on in concept. They all have their individual things like welding, brazing, for the gun and for the thing. Testing it, you know, making sure it's accurized for the gun, or making sure that the muffler actually meets the specification. In the computer, it's put in the new part, make sure that's really what's wrong. Then also test the removed part in another machine to make sure that that's what's wrong without blowing up your test machine, which you usually do once every month. I know a lot about these activities, and they're all equally boring. Yes, making a gun is boring. I'm actually more oriented towards airsoft because it's more of a challenge to optimize airsoft and paintball guns, because you're dealing with numbers that are much lower and therefore harder to solve for. If you're running the equivalent to, you know, a 1 watt of energy to do something, you have to be a lot better at your designing. Makes it more interesting. But I'll get bored with that even if I get good at it. I might get a job doing this stuff someday. I got a job doing computers. I've even worked at something like jewelry. That's why I can do my glasses. One of many reasons I was able to build the glasses. I can make glasses very nicely, but even these, I haven't sat down and actually replaced them by really doing the right work, because I can just apply solder. I just use a different type of flux and I can make it work. Now, why am I doing this diatribe about, well, it's about Gamergate and we are women, hear us roar, or we are transgenders, or what? In any of the activities I mentioned that I'm good at, like making a firearm, repairing a bike, repairing a computer, making glasses, do you give a shit that I'm male or female? If that is your priority about buying, selling, or using a device, the person who touched it last was male or female, you're a sexist. If you think I'm going to support women by excluding men, doesn't that make you a sexist or a racist? I don't want anything that isn't from a minority population because I want to bolster their economic power. That actually I consider in the range of okay, just like doing for women if you want to. But isn't it literally you're favoring one group or treating another group badly? Most people think of racist or sexist as people who are antagonistic towards another group. But that also includes being favoritism towards another group. In fact, by definition, legally, racism, sexism, and homophobia is based on having favoritism towards one group and a negative behavior towards another. Usually it requires both. And if you're doing the opposite of it, it's called reverse sexism or reverse racism. Isn't it the same thing? In a way it is, but also it could be considered justice. There's an imbalance in our society. Let's fix it. Okay. So let's get back to a competitive activity like chess or synchronized swimming. Me and the boys are going to get together and make a synchronized swimming activity, and we're going to prove that men can be synchronized swimmers just as much as women can. Because we have to, because otherwise it's sexist. Or our goal is that we are going to compete in the Olympics in synchronized swimming, and we're going to spend the next X number of years to get prepped for it because we want to win the gold. You notice that last one is the actual stated purpose of being in a competitive activity like the Olympics. It's to win a prize for being the best of the bunch. Not, we're going to prove women can do it too, or men can do it too, or whatever. Or black people can do it too. Or gays can do it. None of these are relevant to whether or not you suck at chess or suck at video games. The majority of the population, like literally over 99% of the population, suck by definition, compared to the 1%ers that actually win competitive activities. I can guarantee you if there's a $1 million prize, the majority of you aren't going to be able to earn it in an esports game of League of Legends or even playing Quake, which actually I'm decent at, but I couldn't win. But I'm in the 80 percentile range when I was playing Quake at one time against real players that were considered fantastic. I just couldn't get past that point. You know where the 80 percentile is, really? You know how there's a bell curve where the average person's right here in the middle? Well, that's an adjusted curve. What is the bell curve if you're an 80 percenter? A real one? At video gaming. The curve is over here, it's a spike, and then over here you get this vanishingly small thin wedge where people get really good in the last 3%. It represents this whole space over here of being way over here. The 80% mark is actually over here based on the curve being standardized. But the actual scoring rate, you're jack shit compared to these people. The real 80 percenters are actually, it's 75 percenters is the gaming rule. And all games. It doesn't matter if it's video games or if it's League of Legends like that, or if you're literally a spear chucker. If you're throwing a javelin, I use that joke, by the way. Javelin throwers are ridiculously rarefied. It's like 1/100% of the population can throw a javelin to be able to compete in the Olympics, which is what you should expect. Well, if you have a prize of $1 million for the team that wins, and there's 8 of you on League of Legends, deciding you're going to pick someone not based on how good they are or how well they work in the team, which may mean they suck in everything, but they're really good in the team, basing it on gender, it's an all-girl team of really good players. I'm sure you could build up a team like that. But that being the emphasis seems silly. But all the other teams are all boys. because boys have a tendency of playing the games more often, so it does, in fact, create a larger pool of people who can play, who then gravitate towards each other, not because they're trying to create a better team, but because they're tired of winning too much against bad players or losing too much against really good players. So the bad players get together and play against each other, and they start getting really good at it. A lot of the teams that are doing esports, other gamers, people who used to play a lot of video games in the past, weren't the best ones. They were the worst ones, but they got together because they were equal playing field. I can play against a bunch of other shitty chess players. And because we're all playing against each other, 2 or 3 of us, not me, but 2 or 3 of us might get really good at it because they have enough practice and they're not being made to feel as if they can't win. Well, I can't win. I'll just quit. Well, they don't quit because they're playing against people who are equally bad. Then they get better. Then they start going up through the ranks. That's why the rank method works. Oh, you're good enough to compete with the slightly better group. If you can keep going like that, you do get to be that top rank. Maybe you can compete to share a $1 million prize. Or you can bias it by saying, we're going to create a team not to win a competition, but to prove girls can participate. That's literally a participation goal. You get the participation trophy. A WinRAR is you. This is what it is. Okay. We're going to have a competition to see how many black people can play in chess, or transgender people, or homosexuals, because that somehow means something. No. And what's funny is if you don't do that, the representative population, if it's something broadly interesting, lots of people play video games, you get a really broad representation, race, creed, color, and gender. Except when certain groups of people are conditioned by their society not to participate. And now we get to the actual sexism that really happens. Internalized misogyny is what you'll see in some of the comment sections on YouTube. But internalized, bigotry. Women don't assume they're supposed to be able to compete in video games, so they get this chip on the shoulder factor. You see that in the comment sections on a bunch of Twitter postings and Tumblr postings. But in society, you're assumed to not be able to play a video game because you are female for some blasted reason. A large number of video games are actually written, like some subsections of it, exclusively by women. One of the programming languages that was created a long time ago, COBOL, was written by a woman. Women are all over the place in the tech industry because they're at this upper echelon. The rank and file population also contains women. It's actually about dead even, 50-50 at one point. There are more women getting full-on college degrees in tech fields. They are in STEM all over the place. But they don't get into this rarefied environment. They get down in here. There are more women making chemistry and biology patents than men in many years. In fact, most of them last time I checked. Not that that's really important, but yeah, they're really represented. And in colleges, women are overrepresented. Orientals are overrepresented in some places, some activities. Blacks are overrepresented. They're not in the ratio they should be for the population. Why? Because that population just happened that year to become more interested in it. And a large pool of people interested in it means that small number that will succeed heavily in it becomes visible. It's the same ratio, like 10 to 1 or 5 to 1 or whatever, for almost any activity. It doesn't matter what color you are, race, creed, nationality, gender, lack of gender. And I'm going to get to that now. For the longest time, because of technical limitations and also because of choice, video games, or just internet activity in general, did not have a gender. It's not that you don't identify as binary. You identify as non-binary. I identify as binary, 1 and 0s. I'm not a male or female. I'm not white or black or American or anything. You don't have to identify yourself as anything. But people chose to because, well, there's plenty of people here who are from this country. Okay? Anybody can lie about where they're from. Well, I want verification because nationalism, or I want verification because gender is important. You can decide that you're transgender or a different gender at any time because you just change literally 1s and 0s on the net. It doesn't mean anything. No one cares. No one should care. I grew up and then later learned to be a computer geek, enjoying the fact that this anonymity, not gender lacking thing, was the default. People want to change that. and therefore they take away the anonymity that made us all equal. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.